Closure is freedom, and freedom is the last thing you should ever give away. It you should ever give away. It you and the end of the light. It you with the tongue's chains are not made of iron but of unanswered questions. Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. Niccolo Machiavelli. Closure weakens your influence. Uncertainty keeps you in control. Think carefully about that. The human mind is not built for uncertainty. When a story is incomplete, when an answer is missing, the mind races to fill the gap. It obsesses, replays, creates theories. People lose sleep, replay conversations in their head, and cling to fragments of memory, because their need for closure is stronger than their need for truth. Now ask yourself, what happens when you give them closure? You give them peace. You release them from thinking about you. You remove yourself from their inner dialogue. And the moment you do, your influence evaporates. They may respect you. They may even remember you kindly. But they no longer need you. Your power ends where their certainty begins. But when you deny closure, when you leave the door half open, they cannot stop thinking about you. They seek explanations, but the only person who can provide them is you. This is how influence lingers. You may not even be in the room, yet your absence commands their attention. You may not speak a word, yet your silence screams louder than any explanation could. Consider a leader who is unpredictable. His followers never know his full plan, so they wait, they speculate, they stay hooked. His ambiguity forces them to remain cautious, dependent, attentive. Contrast that with the leader who lays out everything clearly, who explains every step. Once the followers understand the entire picture, they stop needing him. They can walk away, because the story is complete. Even in personal relationships, the same law applies. When someone leaves with closure, they grieve, then heal, then move on. But when someone leaves without explanation, the wound never fully closes. It festers, in the mind, not in the body. The questions remain alive. Why did they do it? What did I miss? Was it my fault? The more they seek answers, the more they circle back to you. You live rent-free in their head, and that is the purest form of power. Machiavelli would tell you that power is not about giving people what they want. It is about making them rely on you for what they cannot resolve. Uncertainty forces reliance. It keeps the other person leaning toward you, reaching for you, even when you are not there. Closure frees them. Uncertainty enslaves them. This is why rulers, commanders, even master manipulators in history, never revealed all their cards. They spoke in riddles. They made half-promises. They gave signals that could be interpreted 100 different ways. Why? Because the mind trapped in uncertainty is a mind under control. Closure ends the game. Uncertainty keeps the game alive forever. And the one who keeps the game alive holds the power. Human beings crave resolution, and denying it creates lasting psychological leverage. This is one of the deepest truths about the human condition, and it is why those who understand the art of power often choose silence, mystery, and unfinished gestures over explanations, confessions, or final answers. To understand this, you must first understand how the human mind works. We are pattern-seeking creatures. Our brains are designed to complete shapes, to finish stories, to solve puzzles. When we see a circle almost drawn, our eyes instinctively close the loop. When we hear a melody, we expect the final note to resolve the tune. When a story ends with a cliffhanger, we cannot rest until we know what comes next. This is not a trivial quirk of human psychology. It is an obsession rooted in our survival instinct. Unfinished stories create tension, and the mind does not rest in tension. It turns the unanswered question over and over until it finds relief, and this is precisely why denying resolution creates such lasting leverage. You trap the other person's mind in an endless cycle of searching, while you yourself remain the keeper of the missing piece. Think of the last time someone left you without answers. Maybe it was a relationship that ended abruptly, a job rejection without explanation, or a close friend who pulled away in silence. Chances are you thought about it far more than you should have. You replayed conversations, analyzed gestures, wondered what you did wrong, or what they were hiding. And what was the result? That person, even in their absence, occupied your thoughts. They lived in your head, because they denied you the closure you so desperately wanted. This is the trap of the human psyche. It is not the answers we remember most vividly, but the unanswered questions. The mind tries to close the loop, but without the missing piece, it can only spin endlessly. And in that spinning, influence lingers. Now imagine someone who understands this dynamic not by accident, but by design. A Machiavellian strategist, a ruler, a leader, or even a cunning rival who knows that people are most controllable when they are restless. By withholding resolution, they plant themselves as a constant reference point in the lives of others. Every silence becomes a puzzle, every vague statement a riddle, every incomplete gesture an echo that demands interpretation. You see, closure is final. It allows someone to file an experience neatly in the cabinet of memory, but the absence of closure leaves that file open, pages scattered, begging to be arranged. And as long as that file remains open, the person cannot truly move on. They are bound to you, if not in body, then in thought. This craving for resolution appears in every domain of life. In politics, a leader who leaves his intentions ambiguous keeps allies and enemies alike cautious, speculating, second-guessing. None dare move against him, because none know his true direction. In business, a negotiator who withholds his bottom line keeps the other side hooked, always reaching, never quite secure. In relationships, a lover who departs without explanation lingers longer in memory than one who offers a full and tidy goodbye. The mind attaches itself, not to what it understands, but to what it cannot explain. That is why the mysterious often fascinate us more than the obvious. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon for decades. It is known as the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency of people to remember unfinished tasks better than completed ones. When you finish something, your brain closes the loop, files it away, and frees your attention. But when something is left incomplete, it hangs in the background of your thoughts, demanding to be finished. Applied to human relationships and power dynamics, the same principle holds. The unfinished conversation, the unexplained action, the withheld reason, these live on far longer than the completed story. By denying resolution, you deny the other person peace. You become the missing puzzle piece in their mind, the ghost that haunts their memory, the unresolved note in their song. And what is haunting if not power? To haunt the mind of another is to control them, without force. They might try to move forward, but they can't. They might try to forget, but forgetting is impossible when the story lacks an ending. You are not just remembered, you are obsessed over. And obsession, whether fueled by love, hate, or confusion, is a form of dependence. A person obsessed with understanding you is a person who cannot escape you. This is why denying closure is not mere cruelty. It is a deliberate strategy of influence. Consider the greatest works of art and literature. How many of them end with ambiguity? How many leave the final scene unresolved, the meaning open to interpretation? Why do they linger in our culture longer than neatly resolved tales? Because the audience, denied full closure, keeps returning, keeps debating, keeps seeking meaning. The unresolved becomes immortal. Now consider how this applies to the theater of power. The unresolved leader, the mysterious rival, the enigmatic figure. These become legendary because their silence leaves room for endless speculation. They outlive the straightforward, the predictable, and the fully understood. And yet most people cannot resist giving closure. They feel compelled to explain themselves, to clarify, to justify. They believe that resolution will bring respect or peace. But in truth, every time you offer closure, you hand over your leverage. You release the other person from their mental chain. You free them to move on, to forget, to no longer need you. This may seem noble, but it is weakness in the realm of power. Machiavelli understood that men are ruled not by truth, but by illusion, not by peace, but by unrest. To deny closure is to keep them in unrest, and unrest is the soil in which influence grows. Human beings crave resolution, but the one who can resist giving it, the one who can master silence, ambiguity, and the art of the unfinished, gains a weapon sharper than any sword. That weapon is psychological leverage. It lasts long after words are spoken, long after deeds are done. Closure is temporary, lack of closure is eternal, and those who deny it become unforgettable, not because they gave answers, but because they left questions behind. Power often lies not in what you say, but in what you withhold. The common person believes that influence comes from speech, from persuasion, from eloquence. They imagine that the most powerful are those who can stir a crowd with words, deliver perfect arguments, and state their case with clarity. But those who truly understand the psychology of power know this is only half the truth. Words can inspire, yes, but words also expose. Every explanation reveals something of your mind. Every confession lays bare your intentions. Every declaration gives the other person tools they can use against you. To speak too much is to arm your enemy. To reveal everything is to surrender control. Silence, on the other hand, or deliberate withholding, creates mystery. Mystery provokes curiosity, and curiosity is far stronger than explanation. When people do not know your full thoughts, when they cannot predict your next move, they must keep watching, guessing, adjusting themselves to you. That is real influence. Not when others understand you, but when they are forced to keep questioning you. Think of the leaders who dominated history, not by what they revealed, but by what they concealed. A ruler who makes every plan public loses the advantage of surprise. His enemies can prepare, his allies can calculate their worth, and his rivals can copy his methods. But a ruler who withholds his intentions keeps everyone off balance. They must prepare for every possibility, wasting energy and living in a constant state of uncertainty. His silence becomes a form of psychological warfare. In negotiations, for example, the one who speaks least often controls the table. The more the other side talks, the more they reveal their desires, their fears, their weaknesses. Meanwhile, the silent one learns, absorbs and waits. By withholding words, he gathers information while giving none in return. The longer the silence, the greater the discomfort, and in that discomfort, leverage is born. In relationships too, the principle holds. Words of reassurance can calm someone in the moment, but they also allow that person to categorize you, to put you in a box, to feel secure in what you are. But when you withhold, when you let silence hang in the air, you deny them that comfort. They wonder what you are thinking, whether you are satisfied, whether you are plotting something greater than they can see. Your silence makes them project their own fears and desires onto you, and in doing so, they reveal more about themselves than you ever revealed about yourself. This imbalance of knowledge is power. The less they know of you, the more they imagine, and the more they imagine, the more control you hold without lifting a finger. Machiavelli understood this better than most. In The Prince, he warned against excessive honesty. He knew that men are not moved by truth, but by appearances. Words, once spoken, are fixed, and fixed things can be attacked. Silence, however, cannot be attacked. Ambiguity cannot be pinned down. The man who withholds can never truly be defeated, because no one knows what he stands to lose. Even in modern life, the people we call mysterious or hard to read often attract the greatest fascination. Why? Because we are drawn to what we do not understand. What is fully explained becomes ordinary. What is withheld becomes extraordinary. Power is often imagined as a loud voice, but it is just as often found in the quiet one. The general, who does not reveal when or where he will strike, forces his enemies to guard every gate. The businessman who does not reveal his true motives forces competitors to chase shadow. The friend who withholds his full opinion keeps others cautious around him, never daring to assume his loyalty or enmity. In each case, withholding creates more control than speaking ever could. This does not mean words have no value, of course they do, but words are like currency. Spend them too freely, and they lose their worth. Hoard them, and people value every coin you drop. A rare word becomes priceless, precisely because of its rarity. There is another dimension to withholding. It allows people to trap themselves. When you remain silent, people rush to fill the gap. They confess more than they intended. They reveal their insecurities. They expose their strategies. In trying to understand you, they show you who they are. Your silence becomes a mirror in which they see themselves, and once you know them more deeply than they know you, you hold the upper hand. This is why the most dangerous opponent is not the one who shouts, but the one who watches quietly, speaks little, and gives nothing away. You cannot fight what you cannot define. Psychologically, withholding taps into the same mechanism that makes people crave closure. The mind hates a vacuum. When you withhold, you create a vacuum in conversation, in intention, in meaning. The other person rushes to fill it, often with their own projections. If they fear betrayal, they imagine betrayal. If they hope for approval, they imagine approval. Either way, they react their own imagination, not your actual words. And here lies the subtle genius. You control their actions without ever committing yourself. What is imagined is often stronger than what is real, and by withholding, you allow imagination to work in your favor. This principle applies even to power over yourself. The person who cannot withhold, who must always explain, justify, or express, lacks discipline. They scatter their strength in every direction. But the one who can remain silent, who can endure the discomfort of not explaining, demonstrates mastery over impulse. And mastery over impulse is the foundation of mastery over others. For people sense this control. They sense that you are not desperate to be understood, and that very restraint makes them seek your approval all the more. You do not chase, you are chased. You do not explain, you are interpreted. In truth, what you withhold defines you more than what you say. Words can be false, exaggerated, or misunderstood, but silence is immune to contradiction. You cannot be caught in a lie if you never declare the truth. You cannot be pinned to a motive if you never revealed it. You cannot be cornered if you never showed where you stand. The less of yourself you expose, the more room others have to imagine you as they wish. And strangely, they often imagine you greater than you are. Mystery exaggerates reputation. Silence magnifies presence. What you withhold becomes larger than what you reveal. So, the law remains. Power often lies not in what you say, but in what you withhold. Words may win a moment, but silence wins a lifetime. To speak is to give away pieces of yourself. To withhold is to keep yourself whole. And when you are whole, when nothing essential has been surrendered, you can never be truly defeated. For the strongest fortress is not built of stone, but of secrets unspoken. Machiavelli teaches that emotional control is more potent than physical force. At first glance, this seems almost paradoxical, because history is littered with conquerors,
armies, and empires that wielded physical might to dominate the world. Yet, look deeper, and you will see that physical power is fleeting, while psychological mastery, especially control over emotions, both yours and those of others, creates a far more enduring form of influence. Armies can be defeated, wealth can be stolen, laws can be broken, but a man who has mastered his emotions, and who can manipulate the emotions of others, carries a weapon that cannot be seized. Machiavelli understood that fear, love, hope, and uncertainty move people far more than swords or shields. Physical force can compel obedience for a moment, but emotional control keeps people bound to you long after the force has vanished. The soldier who fights only because of the lash will desert as soon as the lash is gone, but the soldier who fights because of loyalty, fear, or devotion will follow you into impossible battles. That is why emotional mastery outweighs brute strength. It governs not just the body, but the spirit. To control one's own emotions is the first step. The man who cannot govern his anger, his pride, or his despair will always be a slave to circumstance. He lashes out when provoked, makes promises when excited, surrenders when afraid. Such a man cannot command others, for he does not even command himself. Machiavelli saw that rulers who reacted impulsively, who allowed themselves to be carried away by passion, were easily manipulated by their enemies. Anger, once visible, becomes predictable. Fear, once exposed, invites attack. Even kindness, if displayed recklessly, can be exploited. But the ruler who can maintain composure, who can appear calm in storms, who can conceal joy and sorrow alike, creates an aura of invincibility. His enemies cannot read him, his followers cannot doubt him, and his rivals cannot predict it. Emotional control here becomes a shield stronger than iron, because it denies others the ability to influence your decisions. The second step is controlling the emotions of others. This is where true power lies, for the crowd is not moved by logic but by feeling. People rally not because of arguments, but because of hope. They submit not because of facts, but because of fear. They remain loyal not because of contracts, but because of affection. Or Machiavelli observed that rulers who tried to rule purely by force inevitably faced rebellion, but those who mastered the art of shaping emotions could govern without raising a sword. Fear could keep subjects obedient. Hope could inspire them to endure hardship. Uncertainty could keep them cautious and dependent. The ruler who understood which emotion to play at which time could hold power indefinitely, even with limited army. Emotional control, then, is a form of invisible force, one that requires no visible chains but binds far more tightly than shackles ever could. Look at history, and you see examples everywhere. Julius Caesar did not hold Rome merely because of his legions. He held it because he stirred the passions of the people, presenting himself as their champion. Napoleon commanded not only through strategy, but by inspiring devotion, so intense that his men would march starving across frozen fields rather than betray him. These men wielded armies, yes, but their true strength was psychological. Compare them to tyrants, who relied only on fear of punishment, rulers who ruled with brutality, but never cultivated loyalty or awe. Their reigns ended in assassination, revolt, or collapse, because force alone cannot command the soul. Once the lash is gone, the obedience vanishes. Emotional control, however, leaves a mark that lasts long after the man himself is gone. Machiavelli's wisdom also reveals itself in daily life, not only in kingdoms and wars. Consider the workplace. A manager who governs through intimidation may keep employees working for a time, but the resentment builds, and loyalty evaporates. The moment a better opportunity arises, those employees flee. But a leader who commands respect, who inspires trust, who can manage his own frustrations, and appeal to the pride and hopes of his team, will be followed even through difficulty. Emotional control here is not softness, it is strategy. To motivate others, you must understand their desires, fears and insecurities, and you must know when to press them. A cold silence can be more powerful than an angry shout, and a carefully timed word of approval can bind a follower more tightly than a contract. The greatest irony is that emotional control often makes physical force unnecessary. If you can instill fear, you do not need to punish. If you can inspire loyalty, you do not need to bribe. If you can generate uncertainty, you do not need to suppress open. By shaping how people feel, you shape how they behave, and that is far more efficient than constantly fighting them into obedience. Armies, prisons, punishments, all are expensive, fragile and temporary, but emotions cost nothing, and once planted, they multiply on their own. A rumor of your ruthlessness spreads faster than any execution. A whisper of your favor inspires more effort than any wage. The heart moves the hand more reliably than the whip ever could. So when Machiavelli teaches that emotional control is more potent than physical force, he is not diminishing the role of power, but refining it. Power is not only the sword in your hand, but the perception of the sword in the minds of others. It is not only the army at your back, but the fear, hope or admiration that army inspires. The one who controls emotions controls behavior, and the one who controls behavior commands destiny. Force can bend the body, but only emotions can enslave the soul. The ruler who understands this, the leader who can remain composed while stirring the passions of others, wields the purest and most unshakable power of all. Ambiguity leaves people dependent on you, always seeking answers that only you can give. To understand this, one must first recognize the nature of human beings. They do not like to live in uncertainty. The mind craves clarity, the way the body craves food and water. When people do not know where they stand, when they cannot see the full picture, when the truth is withheld, they begin to revolve around the source of that uncertainty. They cannot move forward until they know, and they cannot know unless you decide to reveal. This creates a unique form of dependence, one far stronger than physical need. If you give someone clarity, they can step away from you, but if you keep them in ambiguity, they orbit you, waiting for direction, hoping for an answer, seeking signs in your silences and your half gestures. Machiavelli understood this truth deeply. A prince who tells his subjects exactly what he thinks, exactly what he plans, gives them the power to judge him, to plan around him, to escape him. But a prince who remains ambiguous keeps everyone cautious. His allies hesitate to betray him, his enemies hesitate to strike, his people hesitate to rebel, because none can be certain of his next move. Ambiguity forces others to seek meaning from you, to wait for your guidance, to depend on your word whether it comes today, tomorrow or never. Think of the way a mysterious leader commands attention, without speaking. Every pause, every unexplained glance, every delay becomes significant. His followers discuss what he might have meant, his rivals debate what he might do next. Even silence is interpreted as strategy. The ambiguity makes his presence larger than life, because people project their fears, hopes and desires onto him. Each group sees what they want to see, but none truly know. This keeps them tethered, unable to act without first considering his invisible hand. That is the power of ambiguity. It transforms uncertainty into dependence. People become desperate for even the smallest clue, and you become the only one who can grant it. Ambiguity is powerful because it shifts the burden of thought to others. When you are unclear, others must work to interpret you. They replay your words, analyze your behavior, speculate about your motives. They waste their energy circling around you, while you conserve yours. You can remain still, silent, vague, and yet they do all the work of maintaining your influence. A single vague statement may keep people arguing for months. A half smile, a delay in response, an unexplained action. These create ripples that last far longer than any clear declaration would. If you had spoken plainly, the discussion would end, but by leaving meaning unresolved, you ensure the discussion never stops. In this way, ambiguity is not passive, it is active power, disguised as restraint. Even in politics, ambiguity has always been a weapon. The statesman who speaks too clearly traps himself. He gives his enemies material to use, and he gives his allies reasons to doubt. But the statesman who speaks in generalities, who avoids firm commitments, who hints without confirming, keeps all sides leaning toward him. Each faction interprets his words in the way that benefits them, and each believes he is secretly aligned with their cause. He remains at the center, indispensable because only he knows his true position. This is why treaties are written vaguely, why leaders often give speeches, filled with lofty phrases, but few details. Ambiguity leaves room for interpretation, and interpretation creates dependency. Everyone waits for clarification, but clarification never fully comes. The power lies not in the promise, but in the delay. Ambiguity also magnifies reputation. What is unknown often appears greater than what is revealed. A general whose strength is ambiguous is assumed to be stronger than he. An enemy whose motives are unclear is feared more than one whose plans are known. Even in personal life, the quiet person, the one who withholds full explanation, is often seen as wiser or deeper, simply because their silence leaves space for imagination. Ambiguity becomes a canvas on which others paint their own assumptions, often granting you qualities you never had to prove, and as long as they seek to confirm their own imaginings, they remain tethered to you. The genius of ambiguity is that it does not bind you, but it binds them. You remain free, because you have revealed nothing that can hold you down. They remain bound, because they are forever waiting for what you might reveal. You hold the key, and they do not know if you will use it. They cannot act independently, because they fear misinterpreting your silence. They cannot oppose you, because they fear you may be stronger than they imagine. They cannot abandon you, because they hope you might give them what they seek tomorrow. In every way, ambiguity keeps them tied while you remain untied. Machiavelli's wisdom teaches us that clarity may win trust for a moment, but ambiguity sustains power for a lifetime. People will always hunger for answers, and if you deny them those answers, they will circle around you endless. They will depend on your word. They will wait for your approval. They will fear your hidden strength. In a world where everyone rushes to explain themselves, to justify themselves, to declare their stance, the one who masters ambiguity stands apart. He speaks little, reveals less, but commands more, for ambiguity is not weakness, it is strategy. It is the art of keeping others dependent, always reaching, always waiting, always needing what only you can give. In the end, all of Machiavelli's wisdom on closure, uncertainty, silence, emotional control, and ambiguity folds into one undeniable truth. Power is not only about what you can take from others, but about what you can make them give you willingly. Their attention, their thoughts, their dependence. Closure sets people free, but ambiguity keeps them bound. Words can win applause, but silence plants roots in the mind. Force can bend bodies, but emotional control enslaves souls. To deny resolution, to master restraint, to withhold just enough to keep others reaching for you. This is the essence of psychological leverage. It is not loud. It is not always visible, but it endures long after armies disband and promises fade. The greatest influence belongs to the one who can resist the urge to explain, to finalize, to satisfy, and instead leave others unsettled, curious, and dependent. For closure ends a story, but lack of closure makes you the story they cannot stop telling themselves. That is the law Machiavelli understood. Never give them closure, and you will never lose your hold on their mind.